Hi, I'm Arnie Skelton, and each week in this podcast series, I'm going to offer you my top 10 tips on particular topics or themes that might be of interest to you as a teacher or manager or both.
Hi, and welcome to this week's podcast, which today is going to be about nudge theory. It's had quite a lot of popularity recently, and I just thought I'd spend a little while talking about one of the main characteristics of nudge theory. So before I get into that, I want to ask you some questions. Why would most people take lifts rather than the stairs? That's question one. Why would people take a lift rather than the stairs? Two, in Yellowstone Park in America, the heavy rains brought some of the older fossils to the surface on some of the footpaths, and the keepers of the park put some notices out saying, please don't take the fossils, they're very rare, and although they've come to the surface, just leave them alone, otherwise there'll be no fossils left. And what this note did was have the reverse effect. In fact, it encouraged people to take the fossils. Why was that? And thirdly, why does fly tipping happen to get established? Why are there some unsightly fly tipping sites? And fourthly, when's the best time to sell fertilizers to farmers? Okay, I'll provide the answers to those questions, all of which are relevant to today's theory at the end of the podcast. So, nudge theory. Tip number one, and there are two key principles to nudge theory. So tip number one is the first principle, and that is what's crucial to nudge theory is what we call participant observation. Don't trust what people say, trust what they do. So nudge theory tends not to rely too much on questionnaires or focus groups or surveys, because often people will tell you what they either think you want to hear or what they think they genuinely will do. That is their intention. But in fact, as we all know, people don't always follow their intentions. And so what really matters is, what do people do? So nudge theory tries to understand human behaviour, not what they say, but what they do, and base their findings on what people do. And the second key principle, which is tip number two, is that there are always exceptions to the rules, so that when nudge theory predicts how most people will behave, there will always be exceptions to that. But what nudge theorists say is, always follow the majority. If 80% of the people are likely to act in that way, then it's worth bringing that behaviour about, if that's what you want, and we'll deal with the other 20% in a different way. So we don't automatically have to have everybody on board. It's what I call, don't let the tail wag the dog. There'll always be exceptions, and we don't make particularly allowances for the exceptions. We play for the general rule. If most people will do it, then it's worth doing. So that's tip number two. There'll always be an exception. So tip number three, and the key principle of nudge theory is a mnemonic, an acronym called EAST, E-A-S-T. And it represents 4 key words, all of which are crucial in influencing someone's behaviour. So, the first of those 4 is tip number 4, E for easy. So, the easier something is, the more likely someone is to do it. So, make things easy if you want them to happen. Tip number 5 is the second letter in the word EAST, which is A, and that stands for attractive. Make something attractive. If it's attractive, somebody will be interested in it and possibly do it because it's attractive. So, tip number 5, make something attractive. Tip number 6 is the third letter of EAST, which is S, and that stands for socially acceptable. People are generally herd animals. We will do what most people do. We will do what is socially acceptable. We tend to follow the norm of human behaviour. We don't like to stand out. So, if most people do it, then most other people will do it. As I said before, there will always be exceptions to that, but most people follow convention are herd animals and will do things that are socially acceptable. And tip number 7, the last letter of East, is T, and that stands for timely. Make things timely for people. Make it convenient in terms of time for people to do things. So that's East. Make things easy, attractive, socially acceptable and timely. The opposite is also true, and that's tip number 8. If we reverse East, unfortunately as a mnemonic we don't get or can't use West. What a pity. But we can have Dusi, D-U-S-I. And Dusi, all as one tip, tip number 8, stands for the reverse of East. So Dusi is difficult, unattractive, socially unacceptable, and inconvenient in terms of time. Difficult, unattractive, socially unacceptable, and inconvenient in terms of time. So, let's take those two sets of 4 letters together. East encourages behaviour. Dusi discourages behaviour. So if you want somebody to do something, make it East. If you want to discourage someone from doing something, make it Dusi. They both work. They both influence human behaviour towards something, which is East, and away from something, which is Dusi. So, my own example is tip number 9. I do a 10,000 step walk every day. Today was my 512th successive day of walking 10,000 steps. Now, how does that fit in terms of nudge theory? Well, it's easy. It's easy for me to do that walk. I used to do running, quite a lot of running. I used to run marathons and half marathons, but that was always a strain and took its toll on my legs. Walking is so much easier, so it matches the E of easy. Attractive, well yes, I enjoy going out and walking in the fresh air, but I also listen to podcasts like this one, and 10,000 steps takes me about an hour and a half, so I'm out there for an hour and a half listening to a whole range of podcasts which improves my general knowledge, or something entertaining, light-hearted. It's just generally attractive to go walking and listen to podcasts, so that's the A of East. In terms of socially acceptable, I tend to go walking early in the morning, sometimes 4 o'clock, sometimes 5 o'clock. I love the dawn. I love hearing the dawn chorus and some spectacular sunrises, so that's attractive, but it's also socially acceptable. I go when I'm not disturbing anybody else in the house. It's not easy to go walking during the working day, and in the evening I'd rather be socially available and spend time with the family. So it's socially acceptable for me to go walking early in the morning. And that also covers the T of timely. It's a good time for me to go. It's not disruptive. It's not costing anybody else. I can't easily do it for an hour and a half during my working day, and I don't want to do it in the evenings. That's not a convenient time, given I want to spend time with the family. So for me, personally, East works. It makes doing my 10,000 steps per day, every day, easy, attractive, socially acceptable, and timely. Now, as you're listening to this, and let's use this as tip number 10. Are you a Dusi person if it came to walking 10,000 steps? If you think, well, that's not for me, I couldn't see myself doing that, then is it because it's difficult? 10,000 steps, an hour and a half. Would you find walking for that length of time difficult? Is it unattractive, unappealing? You don't enjoy walking. You don't want to use your time in that way, and there's no appeal to listening to music or podcasts. You'd perhaps be bored doing it, so it'd be unattractive. And in terms of socially unacceptable, it might be that getting up early is not acceptable to you. It might not be possible if you've got a young family to walk for an hour and a half each day. So there may be some social inhibitions to doing it. And finally, it may be inconvenient in terms of time, both in terms of spending that long, an hour and a half, on an exercise, or at any particular time of day, you can't find that time to do it, certainly not on a regular, everyday basis. So you'll see how some people can be influenced for something because it's EAST, and some people can be influenced against the same something because it is DUSI. So those are my top 10 tips. But I said I'd answer those quiz questions right at the start. So let's to repeat them. Why do more people take the lift than the stairs? Because it's easier. When Yellowstone Park asked people not to take the fossils that had been washed to the surface because they were rare and scarce, that became an incentive for people to take them. It was an attractive thing to do, to take what was becoming a very limited and scarce object. So that's the A of attractive. It became attractive to take the fossil. People actually started looking for them, when without the notice they may not have noticed them at all. In terms of fly tipping, once somebody has put down a mattress or a fridge freezer in a piece of countryside, it becomes socially acceptable for other people to do the same. It's really bizarre. People who would not start a fly tip will nonetheless join in because the trend has been established, the pattern has been set. And finally, the best time to sell fertilisers to farmers is nothing to do with the crop season. It's to do when they are most likely to have money to be able to afford the fertiliser. And the answer for that is just after harvest time. So, there are 4 quiz questions, all of which relate to the 4 letters of EAST. Easy, attractive, socially acceptable and timely. Hope you found that helpful. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe. You will still get the podcast for free, but you will also get an alert to let you know when the next podcast is available. And please recommend the podcast to anyone else you think might like it and benefit from it. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review and any other comment, because they'll help promote the podcast series on the relevant platform. So, bye for now.